of the biggest tricks that I can show you as an experienced mechanic is how to get a tyre on and off, and it sounds really simple. Of course it is if you know what you're doing. And to show you the trick, I've got to show you the mechanical aspect of the rim. So all you got to do is push both sides of the tyre off the bead all the way around. And doing that puts the tyre into the centre of the rim, where the rim circumference is actually smaller. And so you just rattle around a bit. If it's a cold day, it's obviously going to be harder. And if you're in a rush, and if you're in a race and you're trying to get back in the race, you're going to panic when you're doing this stuff. The thing is to just try and slow it down, remember the basics, go do it properly, and it'll all happen a bit easier for you. That's the theory. So what I've done there is gone back up, put the valve on top, put the tyre on the ground, and just shaking it around again, squeezing and pushing the tyre down, tuck it into my stomach, push it around to here, and ideally I should be able to pull that off. Now if you can't quite get it off, then you should have a tyre lever ready. You just pop that under one side and go around. Now the tyre pops off again, working opposite the valve there. This is where you can have a look at the profile of the rim. So if you want to pass that around, you can see how it's higher on the outside, and it's obviously a smaller circumference around the inside. And that is one of the biggest tips you can get to make it easy to get the tyre off and to reduce your stress levels immediately. Because your tyre lever just goes in, you quickly whip it around, get at least one side of the tyre off, and then try to push the other side off as well. Again, that really does come down to practice. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to, in a fluster, put the same tube back in. Has anybody ever done that? Yeah, I've never done it either. Never done it. Now, what we're going to do is just go through the process here of showing you how to put this all back together. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of air in there, try to get the valve shut before the air comes out, and most importantly is to check for any causes of what may have be stuck in your tyre. Might cause your flat tyre, the flat tube. So being very careful in case it's a bit of glass. You don't want to cut your fingers, but just gently go around. Thanks, Susanna. Go around and check for any foreign objects that might be in the tyre. And it's really worth going around a couple of times to do that. Even though you might be in a rush, just make sure you're not about to put a tube back into a tyre that has got a piece of glass or a prick or something sticking in there. So go around a couple of times, and there's a little industry rule. What you do is bring the valve around to one of the logos. There's no particular reason for that other than to make it yourself familiar with where your valve is. And what we're going to do is just pop the tyre in there a little bit. Now if you're in a rush, you don't have to worry about that too much, but if you can get your tyre in, your tube in the tyre, I'll do a little bit. And of course you're supposed to worry about which way your tyre goes. If you're in a real rush, it doesn't really matter. Pop your valve back in, bring the tube in to position here where, that's where it would have been a bit easier if I did it the other way. But getting the tyre on, getting the tube inside the tyre, and then continue to put the tyre on one side. So see how I've got it wedged into my body there? So that's just pretty much standard, supporting the wheel, and that tyre is on one side. All right, so the tube is still hanging out here. What we want to do next is put the tube inside the rim. So you just go around, quickly get that in. Because there's air in the tube will seat itself nicely in there. So that's the next part done. you can see now that all you've got left to do is put the other side of the tyre on. And what we're going to do is go around the opposite the valve, and using this part of your hand here, you're literally, so you're not using your fingers, you're just pushing that tyre over. So I'm using the heel of my hand, it's going over, and then I'm around to that point back at the valve. And now with air in it even, you can quickly try to centre the tyre, and you might get lucky and push that over. But let some air out. And then pop the valve up. It's really important to pop the valve up. The tyre is not sitting on the tube, because when you inflate your tyre, you inflate your tube, your tyre will pop off if the tube is underneath that. You can go to the trouble of checking that your tyre is on properly, and all you're doing is inspecting to make sure that the tube isn't sticking out. And if you've done that properly, it very rarely happens. And then you're ready to inflate. So I'm really going to struggle to take half an hour to show you this, but you can do it a lot quicker if you practice. Let's try it with this one. But if you've got this all set up right, pop that onto there. This one works by engaging it completely and then backing it off a little bit. So I'm just watching, letting that discharge into there, and you're done. Hang on. And what you're looking for there is, again, just making sure the tyre is beaded properly. Off, pop that down, and you're done. Because these are really cold, when they get discharged, you might just be a little bit more careful with doing them up. You might hear a bit of air coming out because it's seized up a bit, but you'll hear that that's stopped properly and you're ready to go. So that's the real basics of it. You obviously can encounter issues when you're doing that, and Murphy's Law, if you know your way around bikes, things will come at you when you really don't want them to. You know, even there for me, the canister didn't want to discharge properly. It took me 2 goes to get it on properly, but you persist with it and you stay calm. And I got 2 canisters in my little kit. I was standing at the back of Untitled the other day, out the back of nowhere, and all I had was that little dispenser and 2 canisters, and it's just so important to get it done properly the first time. Don't rush it.
Bag.
Kit
It's
bag.
not screwed in.
No.
So
No.
you screw it and pierce it.
Yep.
As you do
So
the tyre. And
we'll
is
make sure
one
that-
canister, one tyre?
Yeah, 1 canister, 1 tyre generally.
Yep.
But what we do there is make sure that that is off.
Yeah.
So it has an open setting, it has an off setting.
Yeah.
So getting that completely
Yeah.
in, and it's ready to go.
So you didn't hear a little psst or anything as
Yeah, a little bit.
if it wasn't windy, we might hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
you
then-
just hold it in there.
Yeah. So just
So-
find yourself a good spot where you can push this down on the ground and stabilise it. So maybe one hand on your
Yeah.
on your
and
knee.
you want to make sure that this will be open, of course.
Yeah,
Sorry,
make
I'm
sure
asking
you-
really
No, that's a
silly
perfect
questions.
question. Open the
So
valve.
up here,
So we're making
Yeah.
sure the valve is open.
put that on.
Yeah.
And then do I press it up and then turn this?
No, that's already engaged.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is the dial on the back. So make sure that that's on nicely. Now that's going to get cold.
Okay.
So you're just pushing it up, and you can
Okay,
feel how
so
the
put it on.
valve.
So I want to do it like this or something.
Yeah,
And then turn this.
yeah, and just do it. Open it up a little bit, and then turn it off. So you work out you've got control of it. That's it. Do it again, and now check it. Make sure your tyre's on properly. It looks like it is, just via visual inspection. And now finish it off, and you can just open it right up. You can hear the tyre pop back onto the bead.
Yeah, wow, I've turned it off.
Just one per canister. There are jump canisters for mountain biking. So this is the hard bit where it's stuck on, so you just gently pull that down.
Straight? Can I do it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Straight down. Yeah, that's gone ice. Not really, no. Oh, thank you. No, it's just one of those.
So it's just pressure downwards.
Straight down, yeah.
Maybe I just need to be a little bit more.
Oh, I was having trouble as well. It's because it's cold and it's fused.
Okay.
Then you do your valve up.
And my bike has disc brakes, so it's no different other than
It
I don't
is.
undo anything with those, right?
Yeah,
And I just have to line them back up.
that's right. Yeah, and with disc brakes, you do encounter a little bit more of an alignment drama where you have to line up the disc in between the pads.
Yeah.
And then
One, but only the
practice.
front.
Practice again is simply going to make it a process where you feel more familiar with it.
Yeah.
Practice it and practice it. And it doesn't matter how much you practice it, it's always going to throw up challenges, and you just have to be ready to just deal with it and move on with it. And if it really gives you pain, just put it down for 2 minutes, go back to it, and it'll be all right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And can you run through just what the essentials will be for everyone about what should go in a little?
Okay, and this little rehash, just making sure you're familiar with the key aspects, essentially the safety, most importantly. Inserting that canister all the way in. Most of the devices, you're screwing it all the way in. When you're activating it, you're only activating it when it's on the valve. The valve obviously is open, and then you back off or you operate the key for the release of the CO2, and that should get your tyre inflated. You can inflate, use the whole canister, inflate to max each time you use one of these canisters.